Hello, listeners. Welcome to another episode of Origins: A Creative Journey. Today, I am excited to welcome to the show David Mould. Welcome, David.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks, Chris. Excited to be here. Humbled to be on this show.
Excellent. I am excited as well, and you do not have to worry, my friend. Everything I've heard about you, I am just excited to get to know you a little bit more and hear about your journey. Would you please share with us your origin story?
Yeah, so I live in Thailand now and I've been here for the last 20 years, but my journey really starts late 70s, early 80s in the UK. And for context, the UK then double-digit inflation. Both my parents were working, but they both had to have what we would call a side hustle because frankly, it wasn't enough to make everything work. So my mum, was a medical secretary, but equally she'd say she's a cook, she's a baker, she's a dressmaker, she's a crafter. And so I remember like always bits of material, like anybody who's lived with a crafter, always stuff around the house, peg dolls, all this sort of wedding dresses, all this sort of stuff. My dad he really wanted to do art. He wanted to go off to art college and do fine art. And like so many people on this podcast, and even my own story, he was told by a teacher, not going to be good enough, go and get a real job. So he was walking by one day and he heard the printing presses and smelt the ink. And he's like, what's that place? And it ended up being the Ordnance Survey, which is the government in the UK. It's where historically you'd go up and have draftsmen over light tables and drawing boards, drawing maps, right? Contours and streams, rivers, roads, and all that stuff. And that's what he did. But still is a brilliant artist. But pen and ink is his medium. And so his side hustle was very much pen and ink, piecework, going off and doing stuff. And I remember these great layouts he did, thinking about working illustrations for a garden design book, how the garden layouts would look like, what the finished shrubs and herbs and all that stuff would look like. And that's what he did. And the other one he did was, I remember these A3 drawings of birds and wildlife you'd see at the edge of a shore or the side of a reservoir or on a river, like all of these things. And we'd color those in as kids. But the thing I remember most is sort of that period around the 80s. He did this great sort of image for then Prince Charles and Lady Diana. And this thing appeared on mugs, carrier bags, T-shirts, badges, like everywhere, like this thing. But he was piecework. So he didn't get any of the commission. It was literally, he was paid to create that thing. Otherwise, we'd be rolling, right? That'd be perfect. That was really how he went around it. So that was my earliest memories, really. And like any kids, I was out drawing, but also frugality drives necessity. And so I also remember sitting in a garage early on, smell of sawdust and all that stuff, as he was making kitchen cabinets or stuff. And so I was there sitting alongside him, helping with the sandpaper initially, and then making bird boxes and kind of he'd throw me some scraps of wood. I'd make a box, and eventually it became almost like an apprentice journey, just going out and doing stuff, making toolboxes and stuff. But beyond that, concrete, bricklaying. I was doing everything really. And that wasn't his skill set, right? But so what I took away from it was really two things. Turning stuff into things, whether that's wood, nails, and glue into a bird box, but also that wasn't what he was trained to do. So now I look back and I go, okay, now I know what it's up to. He's reading the book and he's immediately applying it, just a page ahead of me, basically. And I think that's become part of my work ethic, which is what you know is not your constraint. I'm thinking about what Suzelle said. What you know today is not your constraint. You can always reinvent yourself. You can always learn something new. And kind of that's what drives me as a creative. It's just, we are a collection of our experiences, right? And so always expanding those experiences. The other part of that is reading. I'm just looking in my camera and looking in the background here, and I've got bits of watercolor painting. I've got plenty of books behind me. There's a Lego model up there. And kind of reading was always something for me. And that partly was because my old man, that's what he was doing. And so from a very early age, I kind of read through all the classics, Jules Verne, H.G. Wells, Aldous Huxley. By the age of 8, I was reading Asimov, but also Greek mythology, Norse mythology, Roman Britain, like all this stuff, and it continues to be a thing. And just that tactile experience of reading a book. I'm not into ebooks, but books. And then the final thing, so Lego really saved my life in many ways. So I didn't have language for it when I was a kid, but now I do. So I'm very much an introvert. So time on my own to recharge. And for me, kind of art typically, so the watercolor paintings I do as an opposite day, I paint by myself for myself. That's kind of who I am. So very much an introvert and that opportunity to recharge. But I'm also, only within the last couple of years, I was doing some work for a special project with children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities. I was listening to all these stories, and it's like, that sounds like me. And it was, parents talking about their kids' ADHD, OCD, dyslexia, all the disses, basically. I'm thinking maybe that kind of makes sense. So I probably am undiagnosed ADD, I guess. And so Lego really saved my life, and so, in so much as my parents would just throw me in front of a box of Lego and it would just shut me up, and I go and do that and not do all the other stuff I would normally get into. So probably 3 or 4 years ahead of the age group. My first technical Lego model was the yellow forklift truck. And so really getting into rack and pinion steering and all that stuff, and then the Unimog, slip differential rear axles. And for me, it really is the epitome of, I guess, who I am, which is you have the very prescriptive process of following the little book and doing the build. And then I immediately take it apart, I put all the bits back in, and then recombine, click things together, and kind of use my imagination to build something new. And so that's kind of medium. The Lego was my medium, I guess. I sort of mastering my craft to some extent. So those three things kind of made up my origins in terms of where I get my ideas from, hands-on, practical skills, and then just expanding my universe of ideas by reading, and now reading YouTube courses on Coursera, like all of that stuff, bro.
That is super fascinating. Thank you for sharing, David. One thing I would just want to pull on is you shared that your parents were both crafters and makers in a very tangible way in terms of, woodworking and sewing. And there's a lot of, to your point, making and crafting. And then, you talk about how Legos were really this main staple of your childhood. And now I see you doing watercolor. And so I would love for maybe you to touch upon how that medium, I don't know if in your mind there was a shift, but as a outsider, it seems like there was a shift from, oh, like this very tangible building, more sculptural almost, to kind of a fine art application of painting. So I'd love to hear if you could maybe go into that a little bit more of how that
Yes,
came about.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, to me, there's two things really going on in there. One is a change in medium over time. And I think as a creative, I'm very much a corporate creative. So I'm a creative working inside an industry, working inside, I'm not even marketing or that, but working inside a tech consulting business. And so creativity in that sense is a little bit different. And I suppose my medium has changed from Lego and bits and pieces into ideas and concepts and technology, so that the stuff has changed and the thing has changed. For me, watercolor is very much an opposite day activity. And even then, sort of Lego and kind of what I do on a daily basis is super tight, right? You're bent over, you're really close in. And watercolor for me is a release at the weekend. I mean, it's not the easiest medium to work with. It's very unforgiving, right? You get something wrong, there's no way back. You can't paint over it. It's not oil, it's not acrylic. And if you want to hear a great person talk about that, Andy Evanston, like a brilliant watercolorist. But again, his journey for that was, his background is medical illustration. So again, super detailed, super tight, and kind of then he goes, just gets loose and gets opened up and thinking about watercolor that way. And for me, that's what it is. It's a release. And I've got more paintings in a folder, unfinished or gone wrong. Like I've lost control of the medium. And for me, though, it's every painting is an opportunity to learn, and that's really who I am. And so, I mean, in there's an inflection point, which was like so many people who've been on your show. I was told I really wanted to do architecture when I was at school, and I was told you're not a good enough drawer. Go and get a real job, right? Just go and do that. Go and do something else. And so I ended up doing civil engineering. And so really watercolor and those things, and drawing generally, sketch and wash, they are just a response to working in a tightly constrained place. And then it's a place where you just get some paper and get some paint and you just do what you want to do. And it's not it's a journey. Right? I'm never going to be a watercolor master. But again, as I've said before to other people, I paint by myself for myself. So it doesn't matter if it goes wrong, as long as I step away and go, did I enjoy it? Yes. Did I learn something? Yes. Will I be better next time? Hopefully. Will I ever be good enough to sell it? Probably not. But it's for me. So
Before I ask my real question, people listening, and if you can eventually see the paintings behind David, they're just amazing. How long you been doing watercolors, David?
So I would dabble as a kid, but I only really started during COVID, like so many people, like you go and find a hobby. And so I kind of did that. And so it was YouTube, and I stumbled across Andy Evanston, and then from him, Thomas Schaller, Ian Stewart. And then here in Thailand, there are like some really great watercolorists that I have the privilege of working with and going to workshops. So under the handle Safe the Artist. Like just what people can see behind me, if they ever see or they go to my IG feed, they'll see mostly the outputs of workshops with Safe the artist. Interestingly, his job, his full-time job, he's a professor of architecture at Chulalongkorn University. So again, one of these people who's done the opposite of like, so he's gradually building a career in watercolor and it's loose medium. But then I also go and do sketching and stuff. And so just pen and ink or pen and wash. And I've got different people I look at for that. But it's just something to do during COVID, I guess.
I've known David a long time, and I don't remember when we met, but David's one of my favorite people. Yeah, the reason I pulled on it is I remember being in Tokyo, and you turned to me walking the street one day and you go, I think I'm going to start watercolors again. And then he started and he's mastered it. So I've known you forever. I've had the privilege of traveling the world with you and working with you. And everyone I ever introduce you to in our time together is just blown away by you. You are truly a Renaissance man. So I want to go back to, you wanted to be an architect and they said no to you and they go find this other job. And then suddenly you're working with me, pulling creative out of companies, finding the right creative solutions to do things, which people don't think that's a career, but you're a living proof. You can make a career out of using your creative mind and pulling creative out of the people. So I'd love to jump from, I want to be an architect. They say, go find a real job, and ending up with me in Tokyo and everywhere, London and everywhere else.
I mean, let's just touch on the you're never going to be good enough to be an architect thing quickly. And I think about so many people that I've listened to through you, through my dad's kind of journey. Teachers get it wrong, right? I mean, Ken Robinson, a great educator out of the UK from Liverpool. I read this thing he was talking about. So he went to the same school that Paul McCartney and George Harrison went to. And he was interviewing Paul McCartney and he was like, oh, I hated doing music when I was at school. I was told I wasn't going to be good enough. This Paul McCartney speaking to Ken Robinson. And then Ken Robinson based this statement, which is, let me get this right. There was one teacher in Liverpool that within a couple of years had both George Harrison and Paul McCartney go through his classroom. So 50% of the Beatles. And he told both of them, you'd never do anything in music. So that tells you all you need to know about teachers, right? And really, architecture for me, I guess the teacher looked at it in terms of being an artist. For me, architecture is a problem-solving industry, right? You go and get a brief, or you pull that brief out of people through conversations, and you work out what they need. And it's much more about problem solving than it is about creating a concept. So I ended up doing civil engineering because it was a way of the architect designs something and it's the engineer makes it stand up. But I mean, that's kind of how I think about it. But yeah, I mean, it's still the same process. What I would have done as an architect is what I do today. It's talking to people and working out what their real problems are, not what they say their problems are, but what their real latent needs are. And then using everything I know in terms of ideas and concepts and bits and components and whatever, and clicking those Lego bricks together in a different way that gives them a solution that they didn't know exists. I mean, it's the same basic process. So I don't see it as any different. The journey is the same. The destination is a little bit different, basically.
So I think all three of us definitely are down with the idea of creativity as a problem-solving activity. For a lot of people who I think are maybe more divorced from that, this concept might be new to them. When I just really love what you said about solving people's problems that they actually have, not what they say they have. And so, given that though, would you be able to share maybe an example of that where someone is like, oh, I want this, but they're actually needing something else, just to maybe illustrate your point a little bit more?
Yeah, so I did this piece of work at Microsoft, and it was a CEO sponsored thing, and it was with the NHS in the UK many years ago now, 4 years ago, I guess, before COVID. And it was to do with children with special educational needs and kind of this idea where parents are forced to navigate and bounce between education, the healthcare system, the social care system, because those three things don't talk to each other. And the general approach that people thought was the problem is, oh, we need to have some sort of digital traveling book that is this single place to connect the data up that allows a person to see that. And as I started talking to parents and kind of really understanding what they were really talking about, one parent reminds me particularly, she would say, I have to carry around on the backseat of my car a shoebox full of stuff. And that stuff are, maybe they are letters about my children's prescriptions. Maybe they are various bits of information about why my kid has to use blue tinted lenses in a classroom because he's dyslexic or whatever it is, right? All this stuff. And I was like, well, joining up these parts of the industry with data is not really going to be enough, is it? You've got to have something else with you that not only gives you the data, but allows you to tell that story in a way and, you know, log some of those things. The diarization process that wasn't in there. And you think about, you know, why sometimes kids overact, react differently to others. You know, is it a food diary? Is it like the culmination of what's gone on in the day? Is like just having the data join up between those industries isn't going to be enough. So the real problem is that, but also how does the parent talk about that to the children's doctor or the kid's teacher or whoever it is, right? But also can work with that themselves and eventually work with as that kid grows up and starts to understand their own condition, transition that to them. It needs to be much more than the data at the center of that thing. It's a canvas. What they really need is a canvas that allows them to describe that journey. And so that's kind of what it wasn't just me. I'm like Chris and others, I guess, I'm as much a collector of people as I am a collector of ideas. And so I tapped into my network and I went, okay, this genius over here I can use. And he went, yeah, absolutely, no problem. My kid's got this, happy to help. Here's all my lever arch files. Spoke to someone else. He was like, yeah, happy to help. My kid's got dyslexia. Let's like just go and get this thing done. How much time do you need? Like, I'm not going to book any time. Just want to get this done because, yeah, I've been trying to solve this for my own kids. And that's kind of, I guess, what I do. It's as much moving people around as it is moving ideas around.
And having the right conversations. One of your superpowers, David, besides every time you say something, everyone in the room goes, David did that too, is having the right conversation. And back to your problem solving. So I'd love to pick on you because you're good at it. How do you have the right conversation to solve, to Rick's point, right? How do you pull that out? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
It does make sense. I don't know how to answer it though, because it's not something I necessarily think about doing. It's just who you are, right? I guess I look for the clues. Let me back up one step. I will always go and do some reading, either about the person or the company or the industry. And I'll always walk into a room with a point of view. And so that first conversation is not, tell me what your problems are. Like the first conversation is typically, this is what I know about you. This is kind of how you talk about yourself. Here's one thing I think about that. Does that make sense to you? And you know you're onto something when the person initially leans back and they go, hand on chin, rubbing their chin and go, I hadn't really thought about it that way. And the next thing they do is they lean back in and they're on their elbows on the edge of the table and they go, tell me a little bit more about that. How could we use that? And like that for me is, yeah, I'm just feeling around kind of, when are you getting those reactions? It's not a script you follow. You're just feeling your way and kind of, it's more of an emotional process than an intellectual process, I guess. Yeah, I don't mean, there's no recipe, there's no playbook. It's just, that's who I am, I guess.
Not to interrupt you. It's like you're painting.
Pretty much, right? You put the first brushstroke on the paper and you go, yeah, is that right? Okay, can I build on that? You know, maybe you get a mistake. Sometimes happy mistakes, classics in watercolors, right? That didn't go quite right. Okay, how do I work with it? Or do I throw it away? And I think for me, it's a good conversation is there's been some mistakes. I mean, as a creative, I kind of I think of myself as a futurist as well. And I went through Jane McGonigal's kind of course on Coursera on futures thinking. Brilliant. I love what she does for the Institute for the Future. And the phrase that her and Bob Johansson use is strong opinions lightly held. And for me, that's what it is, right? I have an opinion I've gone in with, and it's either proven wrong or it's proven right. And until a better idea comes along, right, that's my opinion. And I have a new opinion because you're always learning something new. David that showed up yesterday is not the same David that shows up today because David learned something last night. So, and that's, that's how I am, I guess. I don't think I can answer the question, Chris. It's not something I can drill into. It's like, it's just something you do, something you are, right? Yeah.
One thing that I would, and I will make an assertion and I'll let you tell me your reaction, David, but what I'm hearing is that you're providing a mirror for your client or whoever you're talking to, and you're coming in and say, this is what I've seen as an outsider. Tell me how it lands with you. And you're really kind of leaning in with a sense of curiosity in order to kind of determine maybe where to go next. Is that kind of the modus operandi that I'm hearing?
I think that's right, Rick. I think curiosity is the thing, like professional curiosity and a willingness to learn. That's who I am. And that's what I expect of all the people who work with me. And I think a couple of things really lend into that. So I travel a lot. I mean, Chris talked about a few things. I've been to lots and lots of countries. I've lived in many countries. I've worked in many countries. And Tom Kelly from IDEO used to say, think like a traveler. When you go to a city for the first time, you don't walk around looking at your phone and kind of like, you look up and you're looking around and you're naturally drawn to novelty, I guess. You see, oh, I didn't see that. And I mean, an example of that was the first time I was kind of really working in Japan. I got this stored value card that you use for getting on the underground and everything, right? Suica card, little green credit size card with a penguin on it. And it's got this little nick in the short, one of the short edges. I'm like, what's that for? I'm like, okay, it makes sense. Partially sighted people, they know they can put their thumb on that nick and they know exactly which way they're putting it in. So when they insert it into the slot to get on the train or to recharge the card, that was 8 years ago. And now I'm seeing it on credit cards in the UK, right? So novelty is kind of the other thing I see when I'm walking around is I'm drawn to friction. So here in Bangkok, we have an elevated train, a light rail, a SkyTrain. And there's this one place where two lines converge and you run across the platform from one train to the other. And you have one moment when the train's initially pulling in to see, is that train going all the way to the line, into the line, or is it stopping partway? I want to go all the way to the end of the line almost. I don't want to stop halfway up. And you get that one moment. And every time I stand there and I miss the train, and it's got these advertising boards either side of the gates that you get onto the train, and it says, caution, train approaching. Like, wouldn't it be such a small amount of effort to say, and this train will terminate at? So when you run across the platform, you know where it's going. And do I take the risk and jump on, or do I wait for the next one? And so I'm always looking for novelty and friction. And so all of that is becoming my toolkit. And a friend of mine once asked me, you work in banking, you work in healthcare, you work in all these things. How are you an expert in all of these different industries? I'm like, I'm not an expert. But how come you know so much about it? Or how come you can always have an opinion? And I go, do you ever go to hospital? Yes. Is that a perfect experience every time? No. What would you do differently about it? Do you have a bank account? Yes. What was it like when you opened it? When you go to high counter, low counter? Do you like that? No. Okay. So you have an opinion, right? You're not an expert, but you have an opinion on what could be different. And kind of that's just, I show up with an opinion and you have a conversation and the customer goes, yeah, that's good. Let's talk more about, or they go, nah, we've done that already. We're not, that's. So it's just, you're feeling it through. You have, as I said, this collection of experiences and you're always expanding on those. So you always have a new thing to say. And it's just knowing when to say it, I guess. Some of it is just EQ, right? I mean, I've seen so many people, they go, I spent 4 days preparing this presentation and it's 70 pages long and I'm going to go through the presentation. Whereas I'll go, I've got 100 and something pages, but depending on how the conversation goes, I'll flick to that part of the deck and I'll pull up that slide. I don't go the click, click, that's not me. And I guess it's just that how a creative work in those industries, right?
I'm like jumping on my seat over here, like, yes, 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 David. And you're right. This is why I wanted you on the show. You're a creative person, and it's the way in which you look at the world and the conversations that you have and how your mind formulates things to be a creative person. You have this beautiful creative mind that you use all the time. And I'd love to get into the challenges of having this kind of mind. And you and I've talked about this in person, the imposter syndromes and the doubts. And I always bring this up with every guest because I think it's the most important thing as a creative person. How do you deal with it? How do you work with it? And how do you play with it? Because just so everybody knows, I'm not joking when I say it, David, I've worked with him, is loved by customers, top of the heap at what he does. And I'll let him go.
So a beautiful mind, a tricky, atypical mind, maybe, I guess is the place to start with that. And that's part of the trouble is I don't think like most people. I mean, ADD does that to you. So it's one of my superpowers for sure. I mean, other superpowers that partly because of I read Thai and it's a difficult language to read. There's no punctuation, there's no spaces. And so when I started to read Thai, I would like scan a page of Thai and I'd find the bits that I recognize and then kind of read around it. And I found very quickly when I was doing my MBA part-time that that's how I read English. So the other superpowers are I read for comprehension at 1,600 words a minute in English and 1,200 words a minute for recall because I also have an eidetic memory. So what that means is I'm this sponge and I've got all of these things I'm seeing and hearing and reading and listening to, and it's always there in your Sherlock Holmes mind palace. And so you can bring that down. Plus, the kind of the trickiness of my atypical mind means I create these unique connections between ideas. I mean, when I'm reading, I'm usually reading maybe 4 or 5 books at once. Obviously not at once, but anytime, pick it up, put it down. And what that allows me to do is, even though those books really aren't about the same thing, I'll start creating connections in my mind about and threads of, and these golden threads of connective tissue that run through these ideas. And that's really how I think. And so, but that's not how most people think in industry where I work. And the other thing really that's different, I guess, I mean, it's right there in the title of your podcast. Joy is part of the journey, Joy. That is the journey, is the joy of doing the thing, not the destination. And too many technical sellers, name any big tech company, they want the destination as quickly as possible. They want the transaction, they want the check, they want to get the signature, and they want to move on to the next deal. But when we're in it, Chris, you've talked about on other shows, you talked about like the creative tension. I wouldn't even call it creative tension, just tension, right? So don't spend so much time doing that. Just focus on get me to the answer as quickly as possible. And I think one of the things that's made up my career is almost filling a vacuum. So a lot of the stuff that I've done, it's the first time it's been done, you're breaking new ground. And so when people ask you, how long is it going to take? I don't know. It's going to take me as long as it takes because it's never been done before, right? And even though I'm not a Peter Thiel 0 to 1 kind of person, that's not who I am. That's not the sort of creator I am. Because I work, Stephen Johnson in his book, Where Ideas Come From, talks about the adjacent possible. And that's where I live. I live in the adjacencies, the convergence between different industries, different cultures, different countries. And so more times than not, you're doing something for the first time and it's not completely undone, but it's not completely done either. And so I'll take something that's been done in retail and I'll put it in banking. So it's not a 0 to 1, it's a 0.7 to 1. And I'm really working in that one to next, one to many kind of area. But likewise, it's not pure repetition. And so that's the creative part for me, is those unique combinations and that recombining of stuff and ideas and concepts. And the biggest tension is, how quickly are you going to get there? How much more time do you need? And I usually go, I don't know. And that creates tension, right? Ultimately, because you've got to put the effort into actually, but what is the right deal? So what is the right problem you're trying to solve? Articulate that, take the time to actually understand what the real problem is and therefore what the real solutions are, not just the customer asked for this, so I'm going to do that, because all that's going to lead to is in 3 years' time, they're not going to renew because they've got no value from it. Or you're going to put too much in and a competitor's going to come in and go, we can do that cheaper, because they actually spend the time finding out what they really want to do. And that's the friction. You're keeping them away from the destination of getting the deal done. That's the biggest challenge. Chris is rubbing his fingers together doing the money sign. I think that's true. I mean, that's what they're focused on. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying sellers are bad. Sellers are good. They're great at what they do, right? That's just not me. I'm not a hunter in that sense. I'm more of a farmer, I guess.
I would love to hear is because I think a lot of people can relate to you, especially creatives, of we're thinking of new things and we want to try new stuff and we're like, oh, let's go on this journey and like discover things and oh, check this out. And then you have the bottom line chasing destination people who are saying like, well, like how can we eliminate all of that and to your point get to the destination? And how do you manage that tension? Because I think there's a lot of people, a lot of creatives who are missing out on maybe bigger opportunities because they don't manage that tension well. And also there's organizations that are missing out on these amazing, talented people because they can't see the benefit of that tension past that tension either. And so how have you managed to sort of skirt this line of as a creative in a field who traditionally doesn't look at the journey the same way you do?
Chris said imposter syndrome, and I guess I would say probably most people don't think of me as a creative. I fly under the radar. I have to. And that's kind of part of my coping mechanism, is that you have to play the game to some extent. I'm not a master at it. I'm not perfect at it. And kind of what I've done is build a collection of allies around me who help have some of those conversations and let me do what I do. The other thing I would say is, and I think, Hannah talks about this and other people have talked about this, reinventing yourself. So I'm very much a generalist. I'm also, I think, in terms of holism. technical selling kind of in these companies is it's a reductionist kind of very break it down, and it's very reliant on specialists. So even my specialization is generalism. And so you have to kind of reform and kind of redesign yourself. And creatives, artists will understand that. When the Obernoff was talking about her journey and she wanted to break out from that's what she's always done, and now she wants to do this, but people still know you as that thing. That's one of the biggest challenges I have is people go, to Chris's point, you do that as well. And so that's part of the tension I have is people recognize you for the thing you did for them. And that might have been 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago. And trying to go, well, I still do that, but I now also do this. That's part of the challenge. And the only way I've really solved that is, and I don't think I have solved it fully, is build allies, people who understand you, people who know how to use you, how to get value from you, and let them run interference a little bit for you. So you're not kind of dealing in that immediate tension between what you're trying to get done and what the other person wants to get done. You find somebody who can sit in the middle and kind of run disturbance for you.
I love that idea of having creative allies or just allies in general who, like I think what I'm hearing is that because they're better at quote unquote playing the game or better at maybe framing value propositions, you kind of are allowed to just do your magic while they help set you up. And it's finding people who do what you don't like to do very well, and then so you can do what they might not want to do or they might not be able to do very well at the same time. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yeah, it's a team sport, right? I mean, there are 15 players on a rugby side. They all have individual roles, but collectively they do great things. That's what this is. It's not about being a hero. It's not about being a specialist. It's not about doing everything yourself. It's about finding people who can work with you, work for you, and you work for them, and just knowing who's good at what and when to use them. And that's why I guess people like us become collectors of people, not just collectors of things and ideas. Like we need to have that network around us, not only as creative kind of inspiration and scaffolding for that process, but also just scaffolding, right? Help us keep sane almost. I'm not an expert at it. I really am not. I mean, I'm probably at a point now where I need to think about breaking out a little bit and doing something different, because I've kind of run into this place again where I usually end up. And luckily you can hide a little bit in Microsoft because you can move jobs every 18 months to 2 years and you can kind of do that. But now I'm at a point whereby I've got to think differently, because I think the tension part of it is probably is building up a little bit too great. I've got to break cover and go and do something else, I think.
I relate to so much of that, David. So thank you for sharing all of that. And something that we kind of talked about a little bit before we started recording that I do want to get into is you mentioned that you think of yourself as a futurist. And I think for creatives, the past year, the conversation has been really taken up around the role of generative AI. And, I think there is also a lot of tension. I know some artists who work for tech companies, there's tension around, oh, like, am I helping destroy my own job? There's all these questions I think that are very legitimate. There's a lot of discussion to be had around how one uses AI, ethics behind that, all of that sort of thing. But I would love to know how you really see the potential of a creative like yourself and like us in a world where you hear about the quote unquote tech bros who are just like, I want to just outsource everything to AI and not have humans because I don't have to want to pay people. Like, how do you see your place in this future that we may be headed towards, or maybe
That's
already are in?
a great question, Rick. And I think if you're doing the job I do, right, and you haven't had a conversation about AI in the last 6 months, you're not doing it right. I mean, frankly, everyone wants to talk about it. And if you're not talking about it, you're not relevant. So absolutely, when I talk about stuff to things, certainly a lot of that stuff is about AI and use cases for AI and what are we doing about AI. But equally, FOMO and fogey. So I talked to a lot of like CEOs, and it's fear of missing out. I want to get in, but also fear of getting in because in case I get it wrong. And so you're trying to balance that, and that really is that sort of problem solving kind of role of an architect or a facilitator, all that kind of stuff. But if you go back even 5 years, AI was seen as blue collar workers will be displaced. It's like, well, only if you got the robots to do that stuff. And then it became, okay, we don't need accountants, we don't need these people. And so then it was the white collar workers that are going to get displaced. And the creatives were like, it's great, this is sweet, right? That stuff can't do what I do. It can't create images and stuff. And now it can. But I guess I don't think of it as displacing those roles. I think it really is, Gen AI is one of those, or AI in general, it's just another palette. It's another tool. And if I was talking to my dad about this the other day, and I was like, thinking about some of the things I'm being asked to do in my role today, and thinking about how I potentially get rid of people from business, and I'm like, that's the wrong way to think about it. AI is a multiplicative, it's an amplification technology. It's not about replacing people, it's allowing them to do what they're best at and do more of that, and have the AI do the other stuff. But how I'm kind of thinking about it today is, if I was to give a paintbrush and paint a piece of paper to an accountant, say, I'd get paint on paper, but I wouldn't get a painting, because the accountant has a very narrow view of the world, and they know and that's how they will use those tools. Like, the only way I'm going to get the full benefit from generative AI and AI is I need the artists. I need the piano player, not the piano tuner, right? That's a piano tuner, or an engineer will tell me a piano is not a string instrument, it's a percussion instrument, and I hit this key and it puts an arm and it hits the string, and that's what makes the sound. Having the same note at the same, like, that's not music. Music is chords, it's cadence, it's rhythm. And really, artists are those people, creatives are those people that think about those things, not the super narrow kind of very specialized, again, that word, specialized versus generalized view of doing it. If you leave the AI tools and the use of them to the specialists, you'll get answers, but you won't get creativity. And I think the challenge for me, the paradox for me is, these companies who are creating these tools today, they go out and they say, we need more STEM people, go and learn engineering at university, and maths and technology and science. But at the same time, they're creating these tools that means that when those people actually graduate, there might not be jobs for them. But we're forgetting the A. We need less STEM, we need more STEAM. We need, where are the writers, where are the poets, where are the artists, where are the people who can do the UX stuff, where are the people who can play that keyboard of AI stuff to create music, not just sound. And that's how I'm thinking about it today.
Thank you for sharing. And one follow-up that I feel like I need to ask, because this is a big thing that I see like on my Instagram in terms of the anti-AI crowd, is the fact that most of the commercially available generative AI is trained on data sets that contain images and writing that has not been authorized for training. I'd love just to hear your thoughts around the ethics around a creative who is like, I do want to maybe play with something and like start learning how I could do it in an ethical way that I can enhance things as opposed to just copy, but also in a way that feels ethical and in a way where I don't feel like I'm stealing from another artist.
It's a hard question, Rick, honestly. And I think I get caught in kind of both worlds a little bit, in so much as you go and watch Thomas Schaller, go and watch a YouTube of him doing a demonstration. He'll say, these aren't things that I've created. These are things that I've learned, borrow them, use them, just integrate it into what you do. So there's that part of it, which, I guess enlightened creatives will go, my job actually is to put stuff into the world and to make people better, smarter. And then you have the people who kind of more at that piecework end of it, like, I want to get paid for the thing I've done. And I think there really is an answer to it yet. I think it's one of the reasons why when I talk to C-suite level people, CEOs and other people, it's one of the reasons why there is a genuine fear of doing it, because all of that is changing so fast. They don't know, if I do it now and I'm going to get caught out with some sort of legislation later on. And that's part of that kind of, do I go in or do I go out? Because people are trying to wrestle with that at the moment. And I don't think there is an answer, but I think there ever will be an answer. I mean, if I think about it in its most purest sense, to me, kind of what I put out there, I have to treat everything as if it's a Creative Commons license. It's out there. If it's on the internet, someone can use it or something can use it, right? And I can't protect those things forever. And maybe that's just how I think of it, because I'm not a paid artist, right? I do it as a side project, as a hobby. And what I do is usually wrapped up inside non-disclosure agreements and commercial contracts. That means that it doesn't really get out into the world, which is why my Instagram feed is so very poor, because it's kind of you see the stuff that I do at the weekend for myself. You don't see what I do inside an organization for an organization. And I guess that really is the tension that people who are out there doing art as a career really have to wrestle with. And I don't have an answer. But I think the question I would ask myself is, if someone started using this, what would I feel about it? Would I be angry, or would I be happy that someone's found my work and they saw some value in it and they thought, oh, I would like to do something like that and I'm going to borrow it? I think that's the thing for me. If you can be comfortable with that. But even then, I think about, if I look at some of the people I follow on YouTube and Instagram, being a professional artist is not just about sitting in a studio and producing art. It is equally about running workshops and doing demonstrations. So therefore, I'm always leaking my creativity out. I mean, in some ways, I'm being paid to do that. I'm being paid by people who want to come for a weekend watercolor workshop to learn how to do that. So if I'm willing, there is obviously a financial transaction. So, how comfortable are you with that, right? And you've got to think as an artist that ultimately is the full rounded view of being an artist. There is doing the commissions, but there's also teaching, and then there's all of that stuff I do and putting myself out on YouTube so people find me. So all the revenue streams. And I guess that's where we're getting to, and we see it play out in film writing, right? Script writing and all of that happened in LA and shut down productions because they're wrestling with that too. So it's not a new problem. It's just we need to find some more broad-ranging solutions for those problems in terms of people's comfort level.
Yeah, we've had some people from the Microsoft Garage on. The Garage is, just for context for people, it's where Microsoft people play with the greatest and greatest stuff. David's nodding. Okay, so I have been teaching AI at Microsoft right now. I've been traveling, showing stuff because I was showing people how I use AI. Here's the story. So I went, and this will fit back in with you, David. Like, when we got to go talk to a customer, and I'm going to use a real example. I'm working on some sports entertainment stuff. So, okay, I'm going to do so. So I went into my AI and I go, you're a so-and-so in a sports entertainment person. Create me a persona. And I made AI a persona and I had a conversation with the AI, right? Today, I was showing this to the Garage people, and the Garage people were like, that's great. I do the same thing. And they showed me their way of doing it. And then we can go off and do what we want to do for that customer. And what do you think I said when they said, that's great, Chris, we can take all that and figure out what to do with the customer? What my first gut reaction to that was.
After you picked yourself up off the floor, having fallen off your chair?
Yes.
Yeah, no. I mean, AI is a tool, and our role as humans is like any tool. Does it make sense? Can it be trusted? And how does it integrate into my overall thinking about that problem space? It's not the answer. It becomes part of the stuff that allows me to create the thing. And if I'm going to ask it a question, when I use it, I'll go, give me 5 suggestions of that thing, right? Not 1, 5. And I will then go off and make a choice as to which of those, if any, makes sense, or which bits do I like from all 5, and I'll integrate it, synthesize it, aggregate it into the thing I like best. And that's all being a creative is, right? Is I'm going, okay, I'm not creating something from brand new. It's always informed by something I've done before. And so that's all it really is. It's just, you've got to move, you've got to elevate yourself up to a place where it's not the thing, it's not the answer, it's not the destination or the outcome. It is part of the journey. Using those tools is part of the journey. I think where I got really angry the other day, I was on annual leave back in the UK, and my nephew has dyslexia. And I said, how are you using ChatGPT? And he went, I'm not allowed to. I'm not allowed to use it. Like, why? So that doesn't make sense. I mean, actually, 2 things. 1, the teacher who is telling you not to use it is actually not preparing you for the future workforce, because once you start working, you will absolutely be using it. So get to know it now and be comfortable with it, part 1. Part 2, someone with dyslexia, okay, I'm not asking you to go and use that thing to create your assignment for university. What I'm saying is, ask ChatGPT, as a student with dyslexia, what are some of the tips and scaffolding I need to build myself a learning plan and help guide me through that process? Because that's where my blind spot is. It's not about creating the object at the end. It's about the process that allows me to create that. That's what you should be using it for, is your personal advisor to help you get through that process. And to me, that's kind of where we are. And I think we just need to get to that next level of how people use it and for what purpose.
Not to interrupt you, and I would use the same thing when people say create images. I use Dolly all the time because I can't figure out something. And I go, Dolly, how would you do this? And then I go, thank you, Dolly. And then I go draw. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not right.
Well, I mean, Tom DeFalco said something really interesting for me. And so as a generalist, I think at three different levels all the time, right? I'm moving between macro, meso, and micro all the time. When I get down into detail at the micro level, I'm going, does that make sense for like what I'm trying to do at the macro level, the big picture, long-term thing? And and Tom said something in my head, what I heard was something similar, which was I got to focus on the part of the comic that moment of time in that story and what that character is doing. But I'm also thinking Spider-Man generally, kind of what he does, but also within the grand scheme of the storybook and that series, kind of like, so he's working in all those three of those levels. And for me, it's the same thing. If I'm building a storyboard, a DALL-E on image is one part of that. I have to know how it makes sense in the context, either side of that, to know where it fits in. If it fits in at all, throw it away, do another one, right? Or use that to go refine it. Not quite right, that's a little bit wrong, because I've got to have this picture in my head. It's not about creating the one thing. It's about how that one thing fits into the wider sort of storyline that I'm kind of building. And maybe it's written down, maybe it's just in my head. But if you're not doing that, you're not doing it right. My opinion.
And you're making me realize, and I'll add to it, like I suck at Dolly because I'm a visual person and I can't tell it the right way. Like
Right.
I'm missing the skill level. I'm actually transitioning because we're going to run out of time, and I don't want to run out of time without you telling a story. And this is my transition at bad jump into this story. I'm going to leave it at your dad and a Coca-Cola can.
So yeah, I've forgotten all about that actually, Chris. So Rick, when you asked me about AI and IP rights and everything, so my dad was doing some work and he would do these very elaborate images. And one day he walked into a room and someone had his image on the wall and they were claiming it for their work. And he went, "Why are you showing that? That's mine." I went, "No, it can't be yours. How do you know? Prove it." And he went up and he went, "See down there in that little corner, what I do in everything I do, I put this little mini Coca-Cola can because people usually miss that. And I know that therefore that's my work. You've just copied it." And to one of the questions earlier is, how good are you at managing that creative tension and kind of working as a creative inside an industry? And I'm bad at it. And the reason why I'm bad at it is I very much fly under the radar. And because I'm an introvert, I'm not really a self-promoter. And way too many times people have gone, "Here's this thing I've done, and it's my work that's being framed as if they've done it." And they're then sort of talking about it, and they're the ones that get promoted, and they're the ones that kind of survive. And then here we are, and like in the trenches, kind of scrappy, kind of just getting stuff done and doing what we do because we love doing it ultimately. But we typically don't get recognized for doing it. Yeah.
So hide Coke cans in your drawings.
Something
So no one can
that
steal
makes
it.
sense.
One, that's a cool story, and I would love to have been there to see the guy be like, "Oh, I guess this is your drawing because you had the Coke can that none of us knew about." But what I'm kind of hearing, and I think just to wrap up all of the AI stuff so we can move forward, I really want to hear about your upcoming work and what you're working on. But what I'm hearing is that one, it's about how you use it, and two, it's about really thinking back to what it really means to be a creative and for a working artist, what like all of that entails in terms of the story you're telling about your work, the brand, how people relate to you, and all of that is really what you're selling, and it's not just the final painting. And so what I'm hearing is that there's ways to use AI to maybe be a sounding board or an early iterative partner that you can say, "Oh, maybe these are good ideas. Oh, I like this pose. Oh, maybe that's a cool color combination." But then, all right, I'm now setting this aside and I'm going to actually create something from scratch. Is that kind of where we're landing, David?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I mean, creating art by myself, for myself, doing something for work by myself, for myself, not really for myself, but on my own. And because there are so few people who think like me in the businesses I work in, sometimes you need something to talk to and go, does that make sense? I mean, people talk about writer's block. If I was a writer, I'm not a writer, but if I had writer's block, perfect way to use AI. I've kind of got to this point, kind of do an outline. What would you do next? Give me 6 suggestions on what you would do next. I don't have to take any of them, right? Not some of them go, actually, that maybe get me over the hump. That's got me unlocked. Now I go off and do that. So it's about discovering, validating, verifying, and integrating. It's never about just doing it and using it. It's always going to be, in any stretch, right? In any format, any medium, it's always going to be, what should I do next ultimately? What should that pathway be? Give me some suggestions, because I can't just turn around and talk to someone next to me typically. So I ask AI to help me with that, to go, based on everything you know. I mean, ultimately, GPT ate the internet 6 months ago, doesn't know about what happened yesterday, and it's been trained and it's got up to a point where it knows about stuff. And in the AI world, we talk about retrieval augmented generation, which is, here is my storyline that I've produced, right? Here is my briefing note, here's my document. Upload that into a large prompt and go, tell me something new about that I might not have known about. So it's not using, to the question about IP and everything, it's not really using my document. All I'm doing is I'm using the strength and power of what those tools can do to go, combine those things in interesting ways, summarize those things in ways I might not think about, and I will choose to use it or not. And ultimately, it's the human's decision to use it or not, and how I use it, how I integrate it, how I synthesize it. It is merely a tool. That's all it is, right? It's not a replacement. It's a tool for people to use.
I'm just going to add my 2 cents on it. Yes, yes, and yes. Because I always do this with history. Look at, when photography came around, everyone was like, oh, they're destroying art. They're destroying art, right? But
or calculators. Can't use a calculator.
That was the next one.
Right.
But anyone could put up a anyone can put up a camera, take a shot. Anyone can use AI to do stuff. But the difference between using the camera, just shooting, and knowing how to lay it out and how to do depth and how to do color, or using AI to write you a book and hand it in and go, I wrote a book. No, you didn't. I can tell right away it isn't.
And that's why arts people, creatives, are the future of how AI tools will be used. Because that's how I think about it. I don't think about getting to the destination. I think about the journey. And the AI tool is one of the things I use on the journey.
This has been so fascinating, and I feel like we could talk for hours. But in the interest of time, David, where can people find more about you in terms of getting a hold of you or seeing your watercolors? What's the best way for people to find you?
You can find me on Instagram. I mean, it's not great. It's pretty sparse. But what I've been doing recently is digging into some of the stuff I've done in the past. So experience maps and rich pictures and kind of putting some of that stuff up there. And that's primarily because I'm kind of running a bit of a side project for myself. So you can find me on LinkedIn, and you can find both halves of me on LinkedIn. You can find my professional persona, and you can also find that guy in the orange polo shirt. So I've got a side project I've built called The Fourth Horizon, and there I'm putting things on, talking about stuff, blogging about stuff that I can't do in my day job, but I still want to do it because it's interesting and valuable. I think it's valuable. And you can find a link from LinkedIn to that website. And so it really is a bit of a blog. It will hopefully become a video channel. And so that's kind of what I'm doing, is really starting to ramp up my side project.
Really want to know more about this side project because it sounds so cool. How we love to end this show is we always give our guests the final word. So the floor is yours, my friend.
So for me, creativity is about collecting all of those experiences and remaining professionally curious. So, if I was to hold up a book, I've got a couple of books here. So Professor Rita McGrath's book, Seeing Around Corners, and I could go and read that book and it would tell me everything I would know what's in that book. And therefore I'm a little bit smarter. But if I then go to the back and I look at the notes section at the back, what that really tells me is there's all these things I now don't know. And so it's also made me a little bit more stupid. And so really remaining curious and looking at other artists and looking at other ideas and expanding your horizons, to me, that is the creative journey. And that's why I want to thank you both, because what you do for the community, I've been following you since episode 1, and I've gone off, I've looked at Hannah's work and I looked at Suzelle's work, and I've gone off and kind of looked at what these people are doing. I'm like, yeah, I could use that. I really like what that's, and just the fact that you're exposing some of these people who don't necessarily have a platform and making them known and also connecting them with each other. For that, I want to thank you, because to me, that is the heart of what I'm doing in terms of maintaining that professional curiosity and always wanting to do better, always wanting to be the next version of myself. And so thank you for everything you do for the community.
Thank you for joining Rick and myself on another episode of Origins, A Creative Journey, a Designer Con production.
Please like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, download and listen to us every place you get your favorite podcast. Follow us on Instagram at Origins Creative Journey, all one word. Drop us an email for thoughts, ideas, or maybe somebody you'd like us to interview at dconpodcast@gmail.com. And make sure you join us in Las Vegas for DesignerCon, North America's premier annual design convention. All the information can be found, including tickets, at designercon.com. Till then, enjoy your own creative journey.